Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron, I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to dive right in. We're looking at the Textus Receptus. It's kind of a part two, but it's a defense of the Textus Receptus. I went into this in some of our first one under just Textus Receptus from Frederick von Nolan. Great book. I may have done a review on this book years ago. If not, I intended to. Who knows? But anyhow, but we're going to look at some more of a defense and then a relationship of the Textus Receptus to the Byzantine text. We're just using as a basis Wikipedia, but God willing, I'll be throwing in some little nuggets here and there from that. So again, thanks for being with us. Check out our other videos. And even if you don't like the King James Textus Receptus, or you've been watching the usual suspects here on the internet who hate it, let's just listen. The Textus Receptus was defended by John William Burgon. I've never seen his stuff refuted at all. People make fun of him. They don't refute his stuff. The revision revised in 1881, and also by Edward Miller in a guide to the textual criticism of the New Testament. I think I've got reviews of both those on here. Burgon supported his arguments with the opinion that the Codex Alexandrinus and Codex Ephraemi were older than the Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, and that very well could be true, and that the Peshitta translation into Syriac, which supports the Byzantine text, originated in the 2nd century. A lot of people say 157, some say 120, 121. Miller's arguments in favor of readings in the Textus Receptus were the same kind. However, both Burgon and Miller believed that although the Textus Receptus was to be preferred to the Alexandrian text, it still required to be corrected in certain readings against the manuscript tradition of the Byzantine text. In that judgment, they were criticized by Edward F. Hills. Remember, he's got a doctorate in New Testament textual criticism from Harvard, who argues that the principle that God provides truth through scriptural revelation also must imply that God must ensure a preserved transmission of the correct revealed text. And I would agree with that biblically. And also there's been some other really great people that say that, and then some of the old creeds from the 1600s seem to indicate that too. Continuing into the Reformation era of biblical translation and printing, for Hills, the task of biblical scholarship is to identify the particular line of preserved transmission through which God is acting. There's another guy who did the Pickering who thinks he's found it, and he's writing some great books, Wilbur Pickering. You might want to, I've done a review on a couple of his books too, you may want to check out, which culminated in the Textus Receptus, the King James Version. Hills argues that the principle of providentially preserved transmission, not in all cases though obviously, guarantees that the printed Textus Receptus must be the closest text to the Greek autographs. I'm thinking of another guy who died way too early. Theodore Lettuce is who I'm trying to think of. Great job on all this. So he rejects readings in the Byzantine majority text where they're not maintained by the Textus Receptus. Von Soden's majority text isn't identical to these others. Mormon's done some good stuff on that too, Jack Mormon. He goes so far as to conclude that Erasmus must have been providentially guided, and he kind of claimed to be. Hence, the true text is found not only in the text of the majority of New Testament manuscripts, but more especially in the Textus Receptus and its faithful translations of the Textus Receptus, such as the King James Version. In short, the Textus Receptus represents the God-guided revision of the majority text. You also have like the Harvard Literary Guide to the Bible. At the very back, it uses several pages to show the superiority of the King James Version over all modern versions. Hills was the first textual critic to defend the Textus Receptus. No, because we just read where Nolan did. Although others have defended it per se, they're not acknowledged textual critics, such as Theodore Lettuce and David Hocking, or their works are not on a scholarly level, such as Terrence H. Brown and D.A. Waite. Now, to say Waite's not scholarly, he's got 2 PhDs, one in biblical language and one from Dallas Theological Seminary. Yeah, I think that's, and Terrence H. Brown, he's the head of like the Trinitarian Bible Society. So the relationship to the Byzantine text, because sometimes it's used, sometimes it's used in a general catchphrase and sometimes more specific. And I don't think you should criticize people when they're just using it in a generic sense. It'd be like talking about Chevys And then talking about, I'm trying to think of a Chevy car, an Impala. I guess an Impala is a Chevy. So, sometimes people are talking about the Byzantine text, and then majority text, Byzantine text, Textus, Receptus, received text, because then you can go into more specificity. Are you talking about Erasmian text? Are you talking about Stephanus' text? Are you talking about Bezae's text? On and on. And it's the same with Alexandrian text. People talk about what's on the Novum Testamentum Graecii. Was it the 28th edition, 27th, 26th, 25th, 24th, 23rd, 22nd, 21st edition? So, if you're going to pinpoint one, you need to pinpoint the other. Same with the Masoretic text. People say the Masoretic text. Well, there are variations in the Masoretic text as well. You've got the Bamberg edition, the Ben Asher edition, the Ben Khayyam edition, the Stuttgartensia, Leningradensis, on and on. So, also called the majority text, usually is identified by its followers. However, in addition, over many years, Erasmus had extensively annotated New Testament citations and early fathers, such as Augustine and Ambrose, whose biblical quotations were frequently conformed to the Western text type. And he drew extensively on these citations. Now, for the guy who did that, Burgon, he did over 80,000 citations. And then you have Scrivener, but then you have Burgon saying he suggested 150 corrections in the Gospel of Matthew alone. So, within the Textus Receptus tradition, so the Textus Receptus, okay, right now, of all biblical manuscripts in Greek, the overwhelming majority by far are what's known as the minuscule tradition. The minuscule tradition overwhelmingly represents an older tradition that over the course of time, starting about the 8th century, they went from uncials, which is majuscules, which are large print, minuscules, they wrote in small print. And that's to save on paper and all this. And so you, even like your critics and your top-of-the-line textual critics who really don't like the Textus Receptus at all would all admit that a 10th century minuscule may be more accurate than a 2nd century papyri, because the 10th century minuscule may come from a tradition that goes all the way back to the apostles being recorded, where the 2nd century papyri may be a deliberate attempt at obfuscation or deception that we know was going on even into the 1st century. So there's a lot there. And a lot of people just say, oldest is best. There's so many factors into that. So the received text would be that text really that the apostles wrote and has been preserved for us in a codified form at this point. So the received text is part of the Byzantine tradition, but it's not identical to the Byzantine tradition, so to speak. Same with the majority text as well. So God bless. Hey, thanks for being with us. I hope this helped a little bit. We all just want the true Word of God, and everybody's for easy to understand Bibles and all that. But at the same time, accuracy should trump anything, because we want to make sure, people say, oh, it all should be easy to read. But Jesus, a lot of times, he taught parables, and he'd say, I didn't want them to understand. Seeing they may see, hearing they may hear, because he really wanted people to be disciples to catch it. God bless. I love you. I'll talk with you later. Thanks for being with us. And please subscribe, hit the bell notification, share on social media. Please check out our other videos. Bye-bye.